Hello, dear students. Today I begin with one of the new topics prescribed for all the programs of BA, BCom, BSc, BBA. That's dialogue writing. First and foremost thing, we should know what is dialogue writing. Of course, dialogue writing is challenging in part because the reader does not have authority clues for understanding tone. The subtle shades of spoken conversation have to be shaded in using descriptive language. And when it comes to dialogue as a word, and if you want to find out the meaning of it, is a conversation between two or more people as a feature of a book or a play or a film. But it's useful to remember the definition of dialogue as a verb. It means that to take part in conversation or discussion to resolve problem. In storytelling, great dialogue often follows the verbal definition. It solves the story's problems, sketches in clues, builds anticipation, suspense, and more. And what all the main characteristics of dialogue writing? If I focus on this particular point, dialogue, as I told you, it's a conversation and it should have some purpose to it. And it's, of course, a civilized operation. And you can find a kind of, there are two ways, of course, in the kind of conversation between the two or more people. The one is a very formal way and the other is informal way. But when it comes to the dialogue writing, and it should be very civilized operation and democratic. And in terms of democratic, I mean to say here that you have all the liberty to express your own ideas, opinions, and whatever you have in your mind to express. And it's a very constructive act. So if I want to, what is the significance of this dialogue writing and what is the importance of this dialogue writing? Where exactly does it be very useful for us? And as I told you earlier, to express our own thoughts, the dialogue writing is very important, and to listen to the thoughts of others. Because dialogue is not a kind of course, monopoly is one of the other forms of the dialogue writing, but there you have the conversation within you. And when it comes to the outer expression, and you should be the good listener. Until and unless you are the good listeners, you cannot receive what others say and give your proper the opinions on that, or you can express it back. And it, of course, enrich the knowledge through the exchange of thoughts. And if you have the conversation, always the like-minded people, why do they connect each other and how do they connect each other? And if they have the conversation, a conversation in terms of dialogue, and they express one thing and the other person adds something or raise questions or argues, and in various forms they started connecting to each other, and through the very constructive way of dialogues. And it to gain the mutual understanding, many time we will having clash or difference of opinion, without speaking to each other. When we sit together and have a kind of dialogue between or among us, and we'll come to know, and all the misunderstandings possibilities are they can wipe out. And monopoly of expression has no space in dialogue writing. As I told you, monologue, of course, it's other form of the dialogue, but there you don't have the other person to talk to you. And when it comes to the dialogue writing out expressions, and there's no any kind of space for such kind of monopoly. And it helps in respecting others' opinions. And in the conversation, what happens if you respect the opinions of others, and if you listen to the others, then the other person will listen to you. And if you give the respect to their opinion, then the other person will give the respect to your opinions. And it helps in understanding the fact that it is immature to recognize the mistakes. What exactly does it mean? We are not there to find out the mistakes of others, and we are there to rectify our mistakes and recorrect ourselves. And we are not there to correct others, we are there to correct ourselves. And as a part of oral dialogues, you can have a lot of problems with the language, though it is grammatically it's not acceptable, but when it comes to the oral communication, everything is acceptable. But in some cases, like written dialogues, and it needs a proper way of expression. In spoken conversation, what happens, we often change subjects, ramble, or use filler words like like this, that, oh no, she, and such kind of the exaggeration expressions may occur repeatedly as a part of your conversation. But in such kind of the rambles are not permitted when it comes to the written communication. And we should make our dialogue cut to the chase, and we often begin phone calls normally with pleasantries, for example, such as hi, how are you, this, that, we should skip all these in the dialogue writing. And this is one of the very important thing we should remember in this. And blend of dialogue with descriptive narration, often when we write dialogue, we forget to keep the backdrop or surrounds in focus. The effect is similar to the backdrop of a theater being hauled away whenever the actor starts to speak. To keep a very active sense of place slip in narration that adds setting details. For example, you can take up any example for that matter. Use dialogue to reveal key character information. Of course, it dialogue is an excellent vehicle for character building. A character's voice, from their style of speech to the subjects they frequent, builds our understanding of story characters. And even you can come across, learn how to write dialogue that drives plot. There are several ways good dialogue drives plot. As outlined above, it can help develop character traits and motivations. The context of dialogue, the circumstances in which characters speak or overhear others speaking, is also useful for the plot. And avoid unnecessary distracting or absurd dialogue tags. This is very important. If the dialogue, I'll come to that particular point later in detail. And use specific dialogue to illustrate general relationship and situations. And with these, I can add some of a very important rules to be remembered whenever we start writing a good dialogue. And we should start the dialogue with an interrogative sentence. Obviously, always the dialogue, generally the dialogue begin with the interaction. Interaction is nothing but how can we start the dialogues or the conversation with a stranger. And generally we start raising the questions, right? So if we are in bus, and the person beside to us, and if they keep quiet, how do we start our conversation? And we start asking that person, where do you go? And from this, where do you go, is an interrogative sentence or question sentence. And this is how generally the dialogue will begin. And as I told you, we should be the good listener whenever the other person is speaking. And if you are the good listener, definitely, and you listen them properly and receive what do they say, and then it very helpful for you to give back your answers to that person. Um of course, expressing your own views is very important. It doesn't mean that you are agreeing with others. If you keep quiet, it doesn't mean that you are agreeing with others. And if you are saying something to them, it doesn't mean that you are not agreeing or you are arguing with others. Argument should be taken place in the dialogue, and that argument should be very healthy. Argument doesn't mean that you are not agreeing to their points, right? Argument is something you are expressing your own opinions on that particular thing. And new speaker always, when the one person begin his dialogue and concludes, and then the next person should begin with the next paragraph. That's the structure of the writing of a dialogue, and keep it in very simple terms. And when it comes to the student's point of view, and if the topic is given to you, and keep the dialogues in a very simple terms, so that the listener or the readers can understand very easily what exactly you wanted to have the dialogue on what topic. And write a realistic conversation, and don't bring the illusions which are not going to be happen, and bring the conversation which is very realistic. And avoid saying said too many times. He said that, the those said, he she said that. And if you repeatedly use such words, and it looks very absurd in the writing of a dialogue. And should reveal characters relationship with one another. So though you did not say what the relationship they have between them or among them, and through the conversation, and one should understand what the relationship they have among themselves. That's very important. And as I told you, I just go back with the same point where I started avoiding the tag lines. If the two characters are engaged in a dialogue, you can drop your taglines to help clean up the conversation. And of course, this will allow audience to focus on the exchange between the characters. And here I have brought one of the examples in the conversation in the dialogue writing. And in one side you can come across with the taglines and without taglines. And what is this tagline? And want to sit outside today, Meera asked. And want to sit outside today, Meera asked. Even in the outline tag, without taglines also the same thing comes here. And sure, Jen replied, it's nice day today. Hey, how did you do in maths test? Sure, Jen replied, it's nice day today. Here, hey, how did you do in maths test? And the same thing you can come across. But when you go to the third dialogue, I did well, replied Meera, I did well. So I have removed replied Meera in the third part of this development of the dialogue writing, because the first two or three, up to three, why the taglines are required, and to give the readers or to the listeners a clear picture that the conversation is taking place between two persons. Here in this example, between Meera and Jen. So in the first three conversation, we come across the dialogue has taken place between these two. And the next part, the continuation, and surely the readers or the listeners can easily get the things. The conversation will be continuing, and this is the conversation between Meera and Jen. So this is the good way to write the dialogues. And as I told you, avoiding unnecessary things, saying said, or very informal, repeating words like exaggeration words and everything. And this is how we can write a very good dialogues. And when I come to the examination point of you to the students, and in the examination they give a topic like write a dialogue or construct the dialogue between a doctor and a patient. And how do you begin? And imagine Dr. Ravi is a patient, and doctor, you can give a name or you can write a doctor. And patient Ravi goes to the hospital or to the clinic, and there you should begin. May I get in, doctor? Yes, please. That is the conversation of a doctor. And then oh, what can I do for you, or what happens to you? And this is how the conversation begin. Till the last point, and he gives his prescriptions, and by receiving the fees from the patient. And from that point you can continue your dialogue writing. It needs a lot of practice, one thing. And second very important thing, until and unless you have the good vocabulary, you cannot be a good dialogue writers. So conversation, to have the conversation you need words, right? So if you don't have the words with you to put in the line, or in the sentence, you cannot develop your conversation in a very good way. I ask all the students here to practice more and develop your vocabulary, so that you can be a good dialogue writers. With these, I conclude today. Thank you so much.